Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful June the 10th, 2020. Rondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, is hot, humid, muggy, rainy, and sunshine all going on at one time down here. But we're 93 days away from the supposed kickoff of the NFL season.
Yep.
And we still have unrest in America.
We still have unrest in America. I want to say it's all fair and love and war. Today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. And also all over the world, Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate what he's growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture of Big C. I know we love giving out our Veterans Crisis Hotline. Is so important. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, our veterans for years and decades have been going through troubling times since returning out of active service.
Yeah.
And 22 of they, Charlton, is committing suicide in America, a horrific disease that is not being recognized by anyone out there. And when we think about our government, and their focus hasn't been on the veterans, it has not even been focused on the COVID-19. But giving out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number daily throughout our show is hopefully a way to help get many of those veterans some help, whether it's directly or indirectly. Someone hears that number, Charlton,
Yep,
and can provide it to a veteran that they know, friend, family, or someone they just recognize up and down the street, to give them some help, some emotional solace, that they can speak to somebody to hopefully talk them off that edge, Charlton, because most people just need a friendly ear to listen to them and hear what their problems are and not be judgmental. And that's what the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number does.
and we are doing our part, Big C. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can get some help. Really happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants. When you reach out to them, tell them Big C sent you. The goal is simple: recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it. Sports teams are going to start doing it again, too. Watch TV work for your real estate. 800-772-8624, 800-772-8624. For you looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you can get opportunities there as well. Big C, man, I've been doing the pause. I love doing the Big C pause. I have a Buddhist friend, and she's telling me how she chants Nam Yoho Ren-Kyo, Big C, and it aligns the universe, and it makes things more crystal clear. Big C, you ever chant? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I've said it to myself in my sleep on many occasions.
Yeah, well, it's not talking to yourself in your sleep, it's chatting, Big C. We should all try it sometime. A lot of people, Big C, as we talk about the land of the free and the home of the brave. I know some good old boys last night down in Georgia. We're witnessing again in our country. I know people say, well, how does Black Lives Matter, systemic racism across the board, as 41 less voting stations? The whole stations. You ever go to a gas station and it's closed? How about a voting booth? And 41 fewer stations were available in the state majority African-American districts. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is what we've seen, voter suppression. You talk about land of the free. How can you consider it the land of the free when you're constantly obstructing people's opportunity to vote, trying to disparage them from what's supposed to be an inalienable right part of the Constitution, Charlton. But as we see the opposition constantly towards black people and people of color in America to disparage them from being a part of the process, and they know that that's the strongest voice that minorities have in the United States is to vote.
Yeah.
And when you think about what went on 2 years ago in Georgia when they were having the gubernatorial election, Charlton, and the state attorney general, who is now the governor of the state of Georgia, Charlton,
yeah,
he removed 150,000 people from voting registration, saying
Yeah.
that he could not document that they were still active voters. But he took 150,000 people off the voting poll, Charlton, and yet he won the gubernatorial, campaign by 42,000 votes. And he's still continuing this process today. He and the current attorney general in making it more and more difficult for African Americans and people of color to vote, Charlton. And you talk about equality in America.
Yeah.
Why is it such an issue for white people to stop black people from voting?
Yeah, I still say some, because it's going to take some white lawmakers to stop all that garbage,
when you look at the people that are in charge in Georgia, they're white.
Yeah.
The governor, the attorney general, the person that's in charge of the voting process in the state. When you look at all those people that are connected, that are in charge of people being able to vote, the funding, the setting up of the polls, they're white. And so I can't say a black person is doing this, stopping black people from voting, when it's blatant that it's a white person doing it, Charlton.
Yeah, just want to make sure it's not all white people, because a lot of good white brothers and sisters out there trying to make things better. I'm sure they don't close any ticket stations when they want to buy tickets to football games down south. So I want to ask your thoughts, Big Z. When will the biggest mouths in sports make a statement? Oftentimes, if you go down to a Cowboys football game, Jerry Jones is down on the field before the end of the game, but he's been absent. Maybe he's out on his yacht, Big C, like Gilligan's Island. I hope he's not lost. NFL owners, they have been silent as their players and commissioners speaks out about racial injustice in America and in sports. Also, why don't the owners, especially Jerry Jones, who's always able to find a microphone? Again, you ever see Gilligan's Island when they got lost on the boat, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's amazing. I know you constantly make the call for athletes to go out and initiate change in America. The people who can make the change are the owners. The athletes are only people out there asking for it to be done. Owners can demand that it gets done. You got these 32 owners in the NFL. Think about how powerful that they are, because the president of the United States went and begged them to put their slaves back out on the field and make them go out there and play amidst this corona pandemic. Look at the amount of money they make. They're talking about they thought that they would lose 20% of their income 3 and 4 years ago if they had signed Colin Kaepernick. They thought that they would lose. There's no way that NFL owners will lose money even if Kaepernick had been in the league over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Because the demand for the product is too great, and the gambling will always keep the demand for the product there. When you look at the sports book, it's the number one bet on sports in the world, Charlton,
Yep.
as far as the length of time that it is played. And so when these owners are silent, we heard the commissioner come out and say, we, the National Football League. He never said the owners. He never put the owners in that statement that he made. He never put Colin Kaepernick's name in that statement that he made. So when you look at the statement that the commissioner made in response to the video that black players in the NFL put out, it was rather hollow, Charlton, if you look at it in depth, because the reason for that issue of the players taking a knee was Colin Kaepernick's stance against social injustice and police violence in America, Charlton. And the owners did not stand behind Colin Kaepernick as a whole, nor did the commissioner. And in his hollow statement, he never said that Colin Kaepernick's name or that the owners are behind it.
Yeah.
But you think about Jerry Jones, as you spoke about. This guy can find a mic in a swimming pool, Charlton, underwater, and give a statement. But he has been silent, completely silent on this. And you think about, it's the NFL's number one commodity, the Dallas Cowboys. And when Jerry Jones speaks, everybody listens, like E.F. Hutton.
Yeah.
And Jerry Jones has been silent on this issue. And if he spoke and was saying that what has been done in America is reprehensible to black people in America, Charlton, and it needs to stop the social injustice, it would carry more volume than every player in the NFL getting together.
Yeah, we're asking for good people. It's the good people to do us right, and I think every time we let good people know good people will come to the surface. Major League Baseball, also National Hockey League, Big C, they've been silent also about the racial divide in this country, but we know it's going to take good people. You know how they say good old boys? It's going to take some good old people to fix things, Big C. Your thoughts?
But you're always mentioning that sports is a unifier. And when you think about these leagues, they're out there fighting over millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, Charlton, about playing a child's game. And yet, as black people are losing their lives on television every day and people are witnessing, I think in a way, as sad as it is, Charlton, people have become a little desensitized to it. They become immune to it. It's like, we've seen so much of it. And the people that can make a difference are the people that's being the most silent. We're looking at our politicians. Those are the ones who vote to change laws. We look at our team owners who have more power than any player on the team or even the whole team as a group, Charlton.
Yeah.
And they're silent. So when we talk about good people, and when I look at these team owners, Charlton, they're 99% white. They're 99% white when you look around these professional leagues. And so what you got? It's like in the police force. It's like in the black community. So 1% is making everybody else bad or everybody else good. No, it's the majority, Charlton, that you have to look at when you're talking about proper representation and getting things modified.
Yeah.
If the majority doesn't speak in that light, then things stay status quo.
Yeah, and sometimes people don't speak because they agree. So you can't always hope that people are gonna come out and say something. If they agree, why would they come out and say anything about it? I want to get your thoughts on something too. A lot of people have been just going through, talking to different people about a solution, how we all can find a solution. Do you think professional sports and college sports should consider not playing the national anthem any longer, or should they play the national anthem before athletes enter the stadiums or arena, and should they take and restore the Francis Scott Key original version before the protest? Big C, your thoughts?
I think all of those things just come into play. Is that they should play the original version. If they want to say that people are standing in odd and protest against the flag and the national anthem, play the original version, not the clean, altered version like you get on a radio station.
Yeah.
And then when you buy the CD, it's like, oh, I didn't know all these people were in that song.
Yep.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
And if they did that with the original national anthem, they want to talk about pride of Old Glory.
Yeah.
Play what Old Glory stood for when it was originally produced, Charlton.
Yeah.
That's what you need to do. But I'm a proponent for the athletes not to having to take place in that, Charlton. Is that play the national anthem before they come out on the field.
Yeah.
Why? You have to be the bigger person in the room. If you can create a scenario where this is no longer an issue, Charlton, and it doesn't affect anybody. I mean, you can hear it when you're in the locker room. If you want to stand in the locker room, put your hand over your heart, do that.
Yeah.
But don't put the athletes out there in the middle of the fray, still using them as pawns, Charlton, in this whole scenario, when the decision makers will not make a decision.
Yeah, I'm the proponent of, if we're going to force people to play the national anthem, play it before you walk into your workplace, and also play the original version. You ever go to a movie and they've edited the movie from a 3-hour movie down to 2 hours because they want to cut out some parts? Put the real version, the first version, Francis Scott Key. How about him? Doesn't his life matter to Big C? Do the real version, and let's see if people still want to hear that. Houston Rockets guard Russell Westbrook, he's produced a documentary on race and the race riots actually in Tulsa, Oklahoma, known as the Black Wall Street. And Westbrook started living in Oklahoma City, actually came out of Los Angeles, and opened his eyes to the racism that existed. If people don't know about the Black Wall Street, they should Google that, because when those black Americans were very prosperous, some good old boys, like the rallies that Donald Trump's dad used to attend, they tore it down, they burned it down. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, many people in America are not aware of all black history and how prominent black history was in America. Blacks didn't need desegregation, Charlton. They were prosperous. When you think about black populations in America in the 30s and in the 40s and in the 50s,
yeah,
they were very prosperous and constantly gleaming of, future growth. And I think desegregation was a part to tear that down from the prosperity and the promise of black society. Black society, offered the largest family groups in America percentage-wise,
yeah,
versus white society. And when you look at the financial growth of black America, Charlton, they were self-supported.
Yeah.
They didn't need white communities to give them. They were self-sustaining because they supported each other. And Russell Westbrook, in his move to Oklahoma City as a player, Charlton, saw how that was. He saw the systemic racism that was there in Oklahoma, what, tried to drive the black population out of Oklahoma, Charlton, and what kept the Native American population in Oklahoma, downtrodden and oppressed. So when we think about black culture in America, people only want to think about blacks as athletes being prominent in America. Blacks were very prominent in America financially and socially. And, when we look at all these injustices, all the injustices in America are meant to oppress black people, not to empower black people.
Yeah, Big C, let's play ball. Everybody wants us to play ball, but I do love the dialogue that's happening in our great country. It takes good people, black and white. There's a lot of good and bad people of every skin color on the planet. A lot of people hurt themselves and people who look like them more than someone who doesn't look like them. That's why we need laws to help people understand. I love the fact that sports galvanizes people, and people are talking about opportunities out of the White House. The president's still going to give, I guess, a speech on race, or he decided to redact the speech that he really wanted to give. But when people talk about the White House, even where oftentimes people are waiting for the president's leadership, and he calls together sports commissioners, I think a lot of people maybe don't understand this all over the universe. Not only did slave labor build the White House, but all the early presidents of the United States, except for John Adams and his son John Quincy Adams, were slave owners. That's the great George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, Andrew Jackson, Martin Van Buren, William Henry Harrison, John Tyler, James Polk, Zachary Taylor, Andrew Johnson, and the last president to own slaves in the United States of America, Ulysses S. Grant, who was the 18th president of the United States. Now, I know they all have their pictures in the White House, Big C, and President Trump refuses to put President Obama's picture up there next to those guys. Many of them own slaves. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you think about that not only did they own slaves, but their faces are on the money that we spend in the United States. On the federal dollars that we spend, their faces are on those dollars.
Yeah.
And when you look at Lincoln, he's on a penny?
Yeah.
His face is on a penny because he didn't own slaves.
And the penny's
brass. He wanted to abolish slavery. So he was the least valued financially on legal tender in the United States of all the presidents, when you think about it.
Yeah.
That's how they thought about him, is that, here it is, he wanted to abolish slavery, we'll put him on a penny. That's all he was worth.
Yeah, that's what they put on it.
You think about this, and you talk about land of the free, home of the brave.
Yeah.
And 16 of the 18 first presidents in the United States owned slaves.
Yeah. That
they tortured people, they raped people, they made them work for free, Charlton, and gave them no right to vote, to leave the plantation, to go cohabitate with the people of their own race, any place else in town, Charlton, that they had no freedom. And so when you think about the founding fathers of the Constitution, they were slave owners. Think about that. They were slave owners. They did not believe that black people were people when they wrote that. They didn't feel that black people had rights. None of those people felt that they had an obligation to say, hey, you're free. You are an American citizen.
Yeah.
You have the right to go out and live as you choose, wherever you choose in this country. You're one of the people of this country. Blacks did never get that right, Charlton, from 18 of the first 16 presidents of the United States. It took the 14th Amendment, well after these men were deceased, Charlton, to give slaves that right.
Yeah, I think it's ironic too, and I know a lot of people want to find a solution to make sure that we can all form a more perfect union, and President Trump still will not put up President Obama's picture because he also believes in liberty and justice for all. But I want to ask you his thought. United States, do you think they need a database for bad policemen, just like there's good and bad people? Just like when an average American citizen has a criminal record, and they keep the mug shots, they keep the fingerprints in the national database, and even DNA in many instances. The United States, if they want to get rid of bad cops from being hired again in other departments around the country, just like priests, if a priest molests a child, they don't prosecute him. They ship them to another part of the world, Big C, because they have a very powerful oligarchy. Do you think that the United States needs to create this database, and as well as taking away the voting rights from a felon if a cop murders somebody without cause? Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, I think that would be a right move if you looked into that, is that when you look at citizens, Charlton, and they get arrested for a felony, they lose their voting rights in America. I think if a cop has been, sanctioned for an unjust killing of an American citizen, regardless of the race, Charlton, when they've had too many complaints, against from American citizens, Charlton, about police brutality.
Yeah.
I think that should go up. When they've been fired from a department, is that you create this national database because, the cops in Minneapolis, there was a police chief down in Florida said they can come down and work for me. I don't have no problem with it.
Yeah, that's right.
Think about that. Is that
Yeah.
when you're moving one problem from one city and taking it to another city,
Yeah.
you empower that problem even more because he's going to be even more protected. The biggest problem we have with police in America, Charlton, is called the police union because that police union fights for them even when they do something bad.
Yeah.
And it does not allow for them to get fired, Charlton. And when they're going for internal review, that means they're being reviewed by the union and somebody within that department.
Yeah.
So they're not getting an unfair. They should get a fair hearing, Charlton.
Yeah.
But what they're getting is a biased hearing. It's already weighted towards them. But I think if you created this national database against the police for those bad police, because we have great police,
Oh, a lot of good officers.
law enforcement officers all over this country.
Yeah.
But those bad police, Charlton, now if you lump them in that basket by themselves, we take a huge step as a nation cleaning up the police force.
Yeah, I think if you look at any organization, any people, you got to punish the bad ones, and you want to reward the good ones in any part of society. And I just want to get your thoughts on this, too. I know we talk about sports and politics because it's real. Everybody is doing it now. But as of June 3rd, 2020, the United States Senate, they confirmed 198 judges nominated by President Trump. And there are 43 nominees waiting on Senate approval. And I just wonder if he'll make an issue, a statement on race before he has that signing big. So your thoughts?
You think about that, Charlton. 198 judges that President Trump has appointed, and all these judges haven't been qualified, but because the Senate is Republican approved, they haven't knocked any of them down, even though there's been complaints against a lot of them and lack of qualification.
Yeah.
But why is there a reason? What's the reason for appointing so many judges, Charlton, in the judicial system?
Yeah.
And when we look at the judicial system that is being overburdened by minorities, Charlton, and you're talking about you want judicial reform, but yet you're appointing an abstract number of judges, Charlton, to the bench.
Yeah.
And what are judges there for? To sentence people, Charlton. You got judges sentencing people and changing laws.
Yeah.
And changing laws in the favor of who, Charlton? Because we see the injustice that's done towards minorities
Yeah.
in America. And I know that President Trump has, on many occasions said, he's the law and order president. He's the president for black people in America. But I don't see you, letting all these black people out of jail, Charlton, that's commuting their sentence. I've seen him commute the sentence of a lot of his millionaire friends. And
Yeah.
millionaire friends, Charlton, they're out of prison now.
Yeah.
They're back at home, and they've been convicted. But I don't see him commuting the sentence of black people, Charlton, letting them out in droves, restoring the voting rights. That's the number one thing. If you want to be the president of the people, restore the voting rights of everyone who has served their time in prison and they're out of prison, and now they're back being productive members of society.
Yeah.
Restore their voting rights so they can be truly an American citizen.
I was really hopeful that the president would come out and do something on race. Maybe in his mind he already did. He called the NFL the NBA, and even Major League Baseball, some other sports league, can say let's get sports started again. Maybe that was his speech on race, but I really thought that POTUS would address police reform. And maybe he already has. He did say rough them up when you arrest them. He said that. So maybe that was his address already to the police. And it's amazing how some officers have done that. There's a lot of good officers. We want to protect them too. But it's easier to protect the good ones. It's probably at least 99% of them if they could just get rid of the bad apples. Again, there's no black women in the administration. I was looking. If they are, they're a hit in Big C. You're down. You know a lot of people. Any African-American women in his administration, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's hard to get the African-American perspective when you don't have any
right.
administration.
Yeah.
I saw Ben Carson, the director of HUD, the Secretary of HUD, a couple of days ago on a news broadcast on CNN, and they were asking him information about the rioting that was going on, about George Floyd's death, and how did he feel and how did the administration feel. And he said, well, he didn't have any comment on it, and he was going to leave that for President Trump in due time. He thinks that, it needs to come from his mouth. But here it is, you're one of the top neurosurgeons in America.
Yeah.
And here it is, you're saying you have no comment.
No comment.
And you allegedly you're a black man.
Yeah.
But you have no comment on what was going on in America.
Yeah.
And you had no feelings on it.
Yeah.
Because you're in a protected, hollow situation that it wasn't going to affect you or your family.
Yeah.
But you didn't see what was being done in America by the cops to George Floyd as being wrong, basically by not making a comment on it. You, like many other white Americans, were saying it had to be justified.
Yeah.
But if it had been a dog in the street and a black man kneeling on that dog's throat, I guarantee you, the police would have came and shot that black man for torturing that dog.
Yeah, it's amazing that he's a director of HUD, Housing and Urban Development. But I wonder if President Trump knows that Carson's actually a neurosurgeon, and he doesn't even know what an REO is, real estate on property. It's all fair in love and war, but I do think there's a lot of hope. As I tell you, whether the president speaks about race or not and tries to unite the United States of America, there's a 1,400 players, Big C, the Players Coalition. They gathered 1,400 signatures in support of a bill to end immunity for police officers. And I think that's important because this came from the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, and a letter to the United States Congress to support a bill to end qualified immunity, which makes it difficult to sue police officers for brutality, are the ones that go out and they deliberately murder someone or put their foot on your neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. No one would ever do that to their own child in their own house, put their knee on the neck for 8 minutes and 48 seconds and say, it was justified. I was intimidated. He wouldn't eat his breakfast. No one would do that to a child or even a grown person, but it happens. So, Big C, athletes do have a lot of power. They just got to use it for more than dribbling, Big C. Your thoughts?
Okay, I understand the athletes' plight of 1,400 athletes putting together their signature. That's less than the total number of athletes in the NFL. But which one of those papers or which one of those athletes had their team owner put their name on the document? Like I said, athletes can speak anytime that they want.
Yeah.
They don't wield the power that an owner speaks. So if you'd have had from all of those teams, you have 32 NFL franchises. You have 30 NBA franchises. I believe you have like 32 Major League Baseball
30
franchises. And an equal number, 32 number NHL franchises. So you're basically looking at 120-plus owners, Charlton, of professional franchises in America. 120-plus owners. Yet you're talking 1,400 players that do not carry the weight or the influence of those 120-plus owners.
Yeah.
Give me a list of 100 owners, Charlton, sending a stipulation to Congress about passing that type of reform. Then it will carry some weight. But we keep asking the employees. To make change when the owner is controlling everything.
Yeah.
You can't ask the employees to make all the changes in a company, and yet they get vetoed by the owner. The owner, when he speaks out, everyone has to get in line.
Yeah.
But these owners of these organizations keep refusing, and that's the key element. The owners keep refusing. We can always call on the players. The players play. The owners dictate. So when these owners start dictating these letters to Congress, then we'll get some results. But up until then, Charlton, it's just warm air coming out from the players.
Yeah, I think the late Nipsey Hussle, he has a poster and a saying that when people want to build a wall, instead of trying to build a wall at one time, just lay one brick at a time, and eventually you'll have a wall, kind of like the one that President Hat built around the White House, the People's Place, so they couldn't get in. But I do want to say everything starts with it's one person at a time, one step at a time. Among some of the prominent athletes who signed the letter are Tom Brady, Drew Brees capitulated. He signed the letter. Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott, Myles Garrett, Alex Bergman, CeCe Sabathia, Steve Kerr, and Greg Popovich. They signed it. And again, before we come up on the Big C pause, it's important to realize that we all have an enlightenment at a different time. We all become enlightened at different times. We don't all get there to the finish line at the same time. But I think it's so important seeking to eliminate the doctrine of qualified immunity and give Americans a better chance to hold police officers, especially the bad ones. Every officer has internal affairs. They have created it for themselves because they know they need it. So we want to make sure that people are held accountable, especially when it comes to constitutional rights being violated. And that's athletes,
Do you
Big
remember
C.
1968, Charlton?
Yeah, I was a little boy.
There was a famous photograph that had Bobby Mitchell, Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali, Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Frank Robinson, amongst many others, Charlton, Paul Robeson, that they were sitting down at a round table, and they did the same thing in 1968 that you just mentioned that these athletes did just recently in submitting a letter to the Congress. They asked for this social justice reform. In 1968, black athletes came together as a coalition from a cross-reference of sports and even Hollywood, asking for protection and equal rights under the law as American citizens. 1968, Charlton, 52 years ago, black athletes asked for the same thing. And I know the constant use that we got to have dialogue, we got to start conversation. The conversation has been going on for 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 years from blacks, and not just layman blacks, Charlton, prominent blacks have been asking these same questions, submitting these same requests. And so at what point does it stop falling on deaf ears? It stops falling on deaf ears when the owners that employ these black athletes, these prominent black people, make a stance verbally and in written, Charlton. But up until then, this is the same cry that I've listened to in my lifetime for the last 52 years, that the prominent black athletes have come together and said, enough, we are tired of this, and even the civil rights leaders. But the prominent white people who possess control of this country will not listen. They will not listen. They said, we don't have to listen because you don't wield enough power.
Well, Big C, we're going to take the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. I disagree with you. I'll come back in the second half and tell you why I see things different. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports anywhere in the world. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. So everybody knows, Big C, there's two ways to look at life. When you're driving in your car, you can go forward or you can go backward. And if we keep talking about what happened in the past, then let's just all give up. At the same time, like Nipsey Hussle said, you want to build a wall? Instead of building that wall with one brick, you lay one brick at a time. It takes one person at a time. All colors. It's multicultural. Like Dr. King, I had a dream. It was more than one march that he had, more than one speech, Big C. I think these young players, just like a child says, I want to go play with the neighbor, but I got to ask my parents first. They don't just go to someone's house. They ask the parents have to say yes or no. And so these players are taking that first step to build a wall. It has to start with the first step, Big C. Your thoughts?
Their first step, like I said, in 68, they did the same thing. And you say if you keep looking back, you can't go forward. And I've heard you many times laminate on a situation that occurred when you were 18 years old being pulled over by the police. A situation when you were in grammar school about a teacher using the N-word while you were in class. So those are looking back, Charlton, when you think about that. So those things in the past still bother you a lot, basically on what you said on many occasions on our program. But I'm saying we've witnessed these same situations before from the athletes coming forth. The athletes, their movement has not changed. It has not changed for the last 60 years about the inequalities that have been occurring to them, Charlton, and our culture. It's just the owners of these athletes, their bosses that own the teams, have not felt the same way. You think about the great Bill Russell when he lived in Boston. Bill Russell was treated so bad in the street of Boston, Charlton, when he was a player, he would not even go back to the city of Boston when they retired his number after his playing days were over. You know, they cheered for him when he was on the basketball court, but he was the N-word all day long when he was not on the basketball court, when he tried to move up and down the city of Boston, Charlton. He had to live with that. And it hurt him so bad that he would not go back to a city that was trying to celebrate his legacy as a player. So you got to think about how deep that is. And Bill Russell's been a social activist, and he was a part of that picture in 1968. And he, even at that point then, as well as he does now, talk about the racial injustice that still goes on in America, and how do we get an equal share at the table, Charlton? How do we get to sit at the big folks' table? And that comes from when the owners step up. We'll have black athletes until the sun stops shining, Charlton, speaking out about social injustice, because it will exist in America. We will have athletes speaking out about it. But until we get some white owners speaking out about it, Charlton, it's just social injustice in America.
And some people are. Even with what happened in the past, this is what I believe. We, the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. That's the preamble to the Constitution.
In that Continental Congress, Charlton, when they wrote that, which one of those guys who believed that went and freed their slaves? Tell me, which one of those guys who believed that document that you believe went out and freed their slaves?
I want you to Google amendment, and then you answer that question for yourself.
No. I said of the guys who wrote the document went out and freed their slaves. I know the 14th Amendment freed slaves, okay?
Well,
but I'm saying the guys who wrote that document in 1776, which one of them went out and freed their slaves? And we're talking about 1868 when the 14th Amendment was enacted, Charlton, and slaves got their partial freedom in America. But we're talking about 72 years, Charlton, that document, as you said, was a living and breathing document, that they believed in slavery, Charlton. They believed in torturing black people. And we had 16 of the first 18 presidents of the United States believe that was their right to torture and enslave black people.
Okay, but this is just my opinion. Everybody has a right to look at the world the way they want to, Big C. First of all, before I say this...
But in factuality, was that a fact? I mean, you're looking at the world. We all look at the world. I look at the world. But I'm speaking in fact, instead of looking at a prism saying, well, this could have happened. I'm talking about the facts of the document. As you read that document, and it's factual, the factuality is for the first 78 years, which one of those guys in that document said that blacks were people and deserved the same rights?
You got to understand, there's 27 amendments to the Constitution. Just if you know what amendment is, you quit arguing that they don't exist. I do want to argue this. I want to congratulate my son for graduating high school with honors and being accepted into a major university that used to be a segregated university, but things changed. And I want to encourage all kids. It's okay to know your history, but don't get stuck in it. I want to say this because it's so important. There's been many successful black Americans that have dominated in business, even with racism, even with the original members who wrote the Constitution and James Madison not making equality for all people. But at some point in time, like Nipsey Hussle spoke about, and he lost his life trying to help people, and he also had his own past. But if we don't go forward, then we're going to stay stuck behind. And I want to make sure that, as I was talking to another friend of mine who's in politics in St. Louis, Missouri, there were about 21 black Americans shot. No one's talking about it because the victims were black and so were the assailants. No one's mentioning it. No one's marching. No one's saying we shall overcome. I just want to make sure that everybody who wants to be something in life, if you don't go forward, you're going to get stuck in the past. And please do not give the power of another man or woman to you to determine what happens in your own life. And Big C, that's why I say the amendments are there to make change. They were not set in stone. They're on paper. Big C, your thoughts?
They're on paper. But what amendment to the Constitution has ever been abolished? None of them, Charlton. They've never been abolished. So they are etched in stone from reality because they've never been abolished.
But you got to realize
alterations to amendments, Charlton.
Right.
Not alterations, but added amendments.
That's
they
true.
have added amendments since the original 10 that were put out there. But in adding those amendments, Charlton, you added those amendments because somebody else had been doing wrong. And even in those amendments that's been added, Charlton, when have blacks gained equality in America? Why are the voting rights been gutted in America so that minorities cannot vote? We just witnessed that last night down in Georgia, where you closed down 41 voting polls in black communities, Charlton, not white communities. You have a president talking about we don't need mail-in voting during this pandemic because there's going to be a lot of fraud in mail-in voting. You make it more and more difficult for people of color to participate in the liberties of this country. And the people who make it difficult color to participate in the liberties of this country are not colored people, Charlton. These are white Anglo people that are making it difficult, and they are the ones writing the laws. And so when people of color want to participate in this country because the Constitution allegedly gave them the right to do that, why is it constantly being obstructed by people of non-color, Charlton?
Because I just told you, 21 African Americans were shot in St. Louis over the last 2 weeks. You haven't heard a drop about it. It takes good people and bad people.
In Chicago, it happens every day.
Exactly.
But the issue is, when you have a person who is there to serve and protect, murder somebody on television, how many of those people in St. Louis that were shot did you see on television being shot? But when you have 4 police officers sitting there taking the life of an individual for a $20 bill, Charlton, in 2020, that meant that the life of that black person wasn't worth the $20 bill that they were allegedly arresting him for. We witnessed that on TV. And so, yes, it is an atrocity that any American gets shot, Charlton, and killed and lose their lives. But when we're witnessing it on TV, is that you're saying, yes, it's bad about the 21 being shot. By saying that no one's talking about it, then basically an alternative you're justifying for what everybody's been protesting against for the last 2 weeks.
No, I'm just saying it's a pretty sad when we don't even complain when the people doing the crime look just like us. But I wanna add something, because I want to go forward in life. I can't stay stuck in the past. NASCAR in 2020, would you believe, as you say, that people don't change? They banned the Confederate flag from all properties. Will the fans keep going to NASCAR? I don't know. But would you believe those are white men that did that? Bixie, your thoughts?
So they banned the flag, Charlton. How do they ban the flag? I understand the statement of banning the flag. So you're going to tell a person he can no longer wear his shirt, he can no longer wear his headscarf, he can no longer wear his hat. And so if he has that flag in a shirt underneath his top shirt, Charlton, and once the race starts, he takes off that shirt, how many of these people are they going to come and eject from the race, Charlton? It's a great gesture by NASCAR.
It's a great gesture.
NASCAR has been fueled by the rebel flag throughout its history, Charlton. Yeah. It's part of its DNA. Just like making a left turn, the rebel flag has been part of its DNA. I love the gesture of NASCAR and its president banning the flag, Charlton.
Yeah.
But now it's going to come down to a First Amendment right, the right to freedom of speech, Charlton. And now you're going to ban people about their clothing. We're talking about a tough hold of road, Charlton, and you're talking about Jim Crow states that protect the rebel flag.
Yeah. Well, at the same time, only in America. If you lived in Russia or China, there'd be no discussion about it. I want to mention this.
We can only talk about America. We don't know the injustices that go on in those countries other than what we hear on the news cycle. Just like when you mentioned St. Louis, you hear about what you hear on the news cycle. Have you been in St. Louis and witnessed these things? I know I haven't been there and witnessed these things. We know of the uprising that was in St. Louis 6 years ago when Michael Brown was shot in the street, and the looting and the rioting that went on there, and the police officers getting off in that situation and moving to another department and getting a job.
Well, my friend from St. Louis, very educated black man who also works in law enforcement, he's the one that told me. I want to mention this too. In the last several minutes that we have, man, in leap year our show goes by too fast, and if we all have our own opinions. President Harry Truman, you say things can't change? He banned segregation in the United States military. It was Order 9981. And Trump will not even consider removing Confederate names from military bases and maybe put them in museums. NASCAR has. I'm not saying everything happens at one time with the snap of a finger, but progress is one step at a time. And so even though President Harry Truman was horrible toward African Americans and civil rights and the GI Bill, we know that. But we have those things now because we kept progressing. Give me your thoughts on Truman and Trump. One said we're going to integrate the military finally, but the other said we're not going to take down Confederate emblems and from military bases. And I think he had 5 deferments from defending this great country. Bixie, your thoughts?
You know, President Harry S. Truman practiced segregation, Charlton. He did not award one Medal of Valor to one black soldier during his time as president. Even though he integrated the military, he still was segregating as far as not giving out a Medal of Valor to a black soldier. So what he did on paper versus lip service is two different things. I mean, they're both the same. Harry Truman did not allow blacks to vote. So you think about that. He allowed you to go fight a war to protect white people,
Yeah.
but he would not allow you to vote on your native land, and he kept you segregated in America. It was okay for you to go take a bullet for a white man, but it was not okay for you to vote as a black citizen in America, and you were not going to get a Medal of Valor from him.
But when I told you about the Constitution and the amendments, James Madison wrote the Constitution. Truman wouldn't allow the black Americans to vote. Lyndon Baines Johnson signed the Voting Act and Civil Rights. Things change with time, Big C. I want to ask you this question, though. If you think about, and you know, the Boston, I know you talk a lot about Boston and about how they have such enmity for the African-American athletes. Would you believe the Boston Red Sox, they released a statement today about fan racism at historic Fenway Park. That's in the Boston Globe. That's in 2020. They hadn't done this before. I'm telling you, you may say it takes politicians and legislators to sign law, and of course it does. But it just like everything else in this country, people have to march and protest and bring attention to it, and that it takes time. But give me your thoughts on the Boston Globe talking about racism at Fenway Park from the great people of Boston. Big C, your thoughts?
Racism will never end at Fenway Park. I've been to that rat-infested urinal-smelling place, and it has basically been racist every time I've been there, Charlton. These statements that are made, but it's the actions that are beyond the statements. You think about all the statements that's been made about Black Lives Matter,
Yeah.
and the actions that have been taken by the droves of American and people around the world by taking to the streets to show their displeasure and their disdain and their tide of this action. I've seen corporations and I've seen teams make statements, Charlton, but I have not seen any of them make a physical presence, Charlton. These statements via Twitter or news release, they're fine. But show me your actions beyond that. And just like with Harry S. Truman, he said, yes, we can integrate the military, but we're not going to give them equal pay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give them Medal of Valor for protecting white soldiers and white sovereignty in America. And I'm damn sure not going to give them the right to vote.
And you know, it's interesting, we have those rights today because the amendment to the Constitution, it allows us to form a more perfect union. I want to bring this up in the element of our time. And I'm serious because I talk to so many people about different things, different colors. We say we have a problem with race in this country. What if elementary schools started asking students about racial matters taught in their homes? And since racism is a learned behavior, and good people know that, but perhaps CPS, Child Protective Services, could they do an intervention and consider removing children from the home where their parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles are teaching bigotry? Do you think we would ever see that as a moment to address it the same way they address it if there are drugs in some of the homes where they remove the children? Big C, your thoughts?
Maybe, Charlton, you need to go to YouTube, pull up the Brown-Eyed, Blue-Eyed Project, 1968, by an Iowa school teacher. If you watch that, you will get a new perspective on the things that you say about that, because it has been taught for decades in the school system and at home, Charlton, about racism, and it will always continue.
Yeah, and I know a lot of things are taught by people. It's not a specific color. It's a specific spirit. I've seen good and bad in all people, and it's going to take people.
Did you teach your kids about anti-racism at home, Charlton?
I teach them to treat people the way they want to be treated. I also
but that's teaching anti-racism, that not to be racist and angry towards other people, to be even killed. That's just like you teaching your children how to survive once they get out of the house, how to deal with law enforcement. White people teach opposite of that.
That's not true. That's
racism exists because it's a generational thing.
Big C, that is wrong.
It's a learned behavior. You can't tell somebody that they can't be white and they can't, not want white privilege. You're not going to tell your kids, don't take advantage of what you have. You're not going to tell them. You're not going to tell your kids to denigrate yourself, to take less for somebody else to have more. You don't tell your kids that, and you can't expect a white person to tell their kids that.
Have you been watching the news all over the world where people of all colors are marching for equality for everybody? It's not just blacks. It's everybody who has a good heart. I mean, that's what I see on my TV and when I listen to radio, but everybody has their own opinion. I do want to ask you this thought, though, because if we don't fix it, you and I are Big C Sports, we could have not done this program even 20 years ago. I know for sure 40 years ago, but things change. And it takes good people to make a change, but it's all people. And I think it's highly unfair, if you just look at the man in the mirror, to blame white people when many of those same white people are making sure that my children and your children have liberty and justice for all, it's just not fair to say that they're doing nothing to help. I don't think that is fair at all. But I do.
But you know, when I make a broad statement like that, Charlton, if you don't have any ill feelings in your system, then it won't affect you. Then you understand the statement that I'm making. Just like if I say black people that have done wrong. If you're a black person and you haven't done wrong, then you don't have any ill feelings about the words that come out of my mouth. But when it affects you in a negative light, because it has touched a nerve in the core of your humanity, that you have done bad things or you have allowed bad things to happen and you have witnessed it and it has not bothered you, or you did not feel that you were the person to point out that wrongdoing. That's what it means by when I say that. And I've played sports. I've grown up in majority of white situations, Charlton. I've always been the minority in my life. And so I've dealt with that. But I've had good white people. I've had good black people. I've had good Hispanics and Asians. But when I make a statement, and if that statement does not deal with anything that you've done negatively in your life, then that statement shouldn't bother you. Whether I say black, white, Hispanic, and different, it should not bother you. But if it bothers you, that means because you have a bone to pick with your own system, Charlton.
Well, I think if you listen to your words, you said good and bad, and it's nice when people don't say all black people are all good. There's good and bad people. That's just my opinion. Before we close, I just want to bring up a thought that everybody has their own opinion about it. And everybody knows that in order to form a more perfect union, it takes dialogue. And it's good when you don't agree with everything that somebody says, whether they're the same color or the same gender. There's women's rights. There's rights for people of color, indigenous Americans. We all got to keep pushing forward. I love the dialogue, Big C. We don't have to say that only one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to cook a potato. You can bake it, you can deep fry it, but everybody still wants to have the same liberty and justice for everybody. I believe in the dialogue. I would just say, just like myself, I listen to what I say. You know what? Maybe I could clean that up. Maybe I could redact what I said and come back and make a different statement, because I think that's fair to myself. That's how we keep learning. Before we close in the final 2 minutes, Big C, I just want to ask you, what hope do you have going forward that all these people marching all over the streets, all over the world, what hope do you have that we're going to help make life better where we have liberty and justice for everybody, Big C? Your thoughts?
Charlton, I have minimal hope. I really appreciate all the efforts that are being put forth by people, but for the past 52 years, I have witnessed it. As I noted earlier, back in 68, even back to 66, so we can say the last 54 years that I have witnessed this, Charlton. I've lived it. I've been a part of it. And so when I talk about hope, for the majority of my life has passed me by, Charlton, and we really not have seen the significant change that we've all strived for. In ways, it has gotten worse in America since desegregation, because we have lost the black family structure since that time. We have lost the black business structure at that time. We have taken huge steps back as a black culture because we've tried to assimilate into white culture, and it has really hurt the basis and the foundation of our nationality as black people in America. And so as much as we look as gain, we gave you a black president, we've given you many millionaire black athletes, we've given you a couple of black politicians in total, but what have we given you as a black culture? You don't get into easy financing on a home. We've redlined you people. We've put you guys on social assistance, but we will not educate you. We keep you in line. We keep you below the poverty line, Charlton, as an average. And to say that everybody has the same opportunity to get the same stuff, no, they don't, because you just talked about your son being accepted to a major college, Charlton. How many black kids, depending on the neighborhood and the district that you're in, even get that opportunity, even when they have great grades in school, Charlton? They just don't, because they don't have the financial ability to be able to achieve these things.
Well, I think people got to take the time to learn what it takes to do whatever you got to do and learn the right answer. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. Just say Google or Alexa, anywhere in the world, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. And I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. If you can do it in 60 seconds, Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, How can you lose? Rumble, Young Man Rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Charlton, I want to thank those frontline healthcare workers, the nurses, doctors, and the first responders. And what I'm looking forward to in the University of Charlton, there's 4 major professional leagues in the United States. And there's over 120 owners of those professional teams. Let those owners get together and put a petition in front of the Congress or the Senate saying there is social injustice against black people and my employees in the United States. Then we will start to get equality.
I believe every Monday to Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. you can follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and the good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.